Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me here. I'm going to give another minute or two for some folks to join as well. So we'll get started here in just a few seconds. I feel like I should have make this look like one of those newsroom desks, right, where you see the anchors and they're just kind of talking and writing stuff, and I could fill the time a little bit better. But like I said, we're going to give folks just a few more seconds to filter in, and then we'll get started. So what today is going to accomplish is first, I'm going to set the stage, the context of why we even really did this study, right? So, I know the search ecosystem is changing and you're hearing a lot of buzzwords and there's a lot of shiny objects and bold promises. And then we're going to dive into some of the actual true data points of GBP's ranking number one versus ranking 10th. And we'll kind of also give you some background information about how this was conducted. So the why, the how, and the what. So I'm going to give a few more seconds and we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining us here today. Some more folks filtering in. All right. Well, as more join, they'll join in the midst of what we're talking about. I don't want to punish anyone else for other folks being tardy. So let's talk about what separates top auto dealerships in Google with regards to Google business profiles. If you don't know me, my name is Dane Seville. I'm SearchLab's Director of Brand Experience. I'm the former Director of SEO here. I also co-founded my own agency with friends. That agency still exists today. I'm a former director of content, oversaw content for a 33-store group. So I've been involved with automotive for about 15 years. And I have the pleasure and the honor to speak across the globe on SEO and content. So, background in SEO, background in automotive, love this industry. So thanks for joining me. As I said, we're going to cover some things to give you the context of everything, right? So the why. So you've probably been hearing a lot about AI overviews and LLMs and all these different things happening. And, I conducted my own study outside of this. In fact, I'm going to meet with our director of marketing, Ashley, later this week to kind of talk about how we can kind of present these data findings in the form that we did with this GBP study. But just know that in the study I conducted regarding AI, when it comes to transactional search, only about 10% of transactional searches, so near me, for sale, city, state, other modifiers in which they indicate an interest in actually looking at vehicles to buy, 10.5% average. So still 90% of search results that people see in automotive car searches, transactional, 90% still the 10 blue links and local pack triggering. So GBP is as important as it's ever been. So that also, just for extra context, that ranges based on the market you're in. So for example, here in Pensacola, Florida, for the brands that I looked at for transactional searches, well, there's only one dealership that represents several of the brands I looked at. So because there's only one dealership within 50 miles of me, Google produced an AI overview at a much larger percentage than a Dallas market, because in Dallas, there are multiple dealerships representing each brand. So what Google is doing is trying to satisfy my search by saying, look, here's this dealership in your market, but here are your alternatives that might be outside the scope of where you might traditionally look, but it wants to give you those options. So it's trying to personalize that search for where I'm at. But still, it was only about 20% total. So still, even in a smaller market, it's still 80% plus of traditional search results triggering. AI overviews. So GBPs, in that study, I found that GBPs are actually being used as citations. So your GBP, instead of just your website, can be one of the citations in an AI overview. So when you talk about that zero-click future, when you talk about what data points and how you feed these information systems, GBPs are used, which, well, that leads me to this, LLMs. GBPs can be part of outputs in things like ChatGPT. So yes, there is disruption. Yes, things are changing, but yes, still, your website, your GBP is still a vital, a critical asset in all of what you're doing for search. So let's talk about the how. We took 6 dealership keywords: Chevy dealer, Ford dealer, Toyota dealer, Kia dealer, Jeep dealer, used car dealer. And we applied that to 20 different US cities just to get different market trends and ideas, aggregate a larger data set so that way we could really share a robust insight with you. And of course, that yielded 2,260 sales, primary sales Google business profiles. So again, this study focused on your primary, your main sales GBP as we looked at all of the data points. We used Ahrefs for backlink and visibility data. And then we also wanted to understand and make sure we talked about some of the more important ranking factors. So there's Whitespark local search factors report, for individual weight points. They're in the study. I'm not going to share them here. Just know that we wanted to pull out some of the most important aspects of what influences not just ranking. We looked at ranking factors, but also conversion factors. Because let's be honest, especially as more and more people talk about zero-click search, adoption of LLMs that don't have traditional ranking, right? You don't rank in an LLM like ChatGPT. We want to make sure that we're talking about all the most important things, again, that continue to influence all these different systems. So I don't want to just talk about, all of just necessarily the differences. I even wanted to make sure we hit on some of the similarities between number 1 and number 10, because, well, that just kind of reinforces the true importance of all of it, that, we're making sure that even just the fundamentals are being addressed. So let's go ahead and dive into some of that. So profile setup. So this is a ranking factor. Are the profiles claimed by the dealership, right? So number 10th ranking, 100%. Number 1, 100%. So thank God that we're seeing that, dealerships are owning their assets, right? Claiming their assets that can, influence visibility. That's why the so what, right? An unclaimed profile can't be fully managed, right? Can't edit, can't make posts, can't respond to reviews. And that, of course, puts you at an immediate disadvantage. So making sure that you have that single profile, sales profile claimed, and that way you can start making updates that influence visibility, right? Social media, conversion factor, right? Are there social media links on the profile? For those ranking number 10, 93%, number 1, 98%, right? So still, there is a degree of variance here, right? But 93 to 98, I wasn't going to bucket this into something being drastically different. So what? Well, social media links reinforce credibility, give customers more ways to engage. So make sure that you have your socials linked. But a caveat to that, make sure the socials linked, you're using them. There have been often times where I'm looking at a GBP, and it's not necessarily part of the audit that we conduct at SearchLab for folks, but I include it as a note, like, hey, look, you have X linked in your GBP, and it's never been used. There's not a single tweet or X'd. I don't know what the language is, but make sure you're leveraging that. But also remember, social media, more and more social media being part of Google's index, seeing posts and reels from different platforms, right? So make sure that, hey, look, it can show up alongside your website links, right? But it's also an opportunity for people to see the experience they're going to have at your dealership, see the lot, see happy customers, see the folks they're going to give their business to. So make sure you're leveraging these other platforms in smart, strategic ways. And also, well, hey, that also helps feed more data points to all those different AI systems that are out there. So make sure, you have them linked, but make sure the ones that are linked are ones that you actively use. So make sure you have those strategies in place. Google posts, again, not a ranking factor, a conversion factor. How many Google posts per month are published? Number 10th ranked, about 2 posts per month. Number 1, 3 posts per month. Again, hey, one more. I don't want to put that into a bucket of difference because, well, it's off by 1, right? So what? Well, here's the deal. Regular posting helps you stand out from your competitors. It helps drive pre-site conversions. So position 1 dealers do post more often than those in position 10. Understand that here's an average, right? Dealerships average just under 4 posts monthly. So again, posts are an opportunity to, remember, your website is the only place your competitors' inventory is not. So you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel or go overboard with strategizing on Google posts, but the juice is worth the squeeze that if we can drive some more folks through from the GBP to your website, That's an important conversion point. But then, even though they're not a direct ranking factor, if you drive highly engaged traffic from your GBP through to your website, and that user scrolls and clicks and discovers more information and goes on other pages on your site, all those signals are a ranking signal, right? So let's drive more people strategically through whether it's posts about sales at your dealership, posting about the experience at your dealership, or hey, I can say use analytics, right? Be data driven in your decision making. Where do you have the most highly engaged sessions on your website? What content are people engaging with? How can we parlay that into like a visual media rich Google post that we can hopefully drive more highly engaged sessions through to the website? So think strategically about not just posting for the sake of posting, just like don't produce content for the sake of producing content. Think strategically about how you can provide real value to real consumers that generate real results for your dealership. Website link, ranking signal. Is there a website link on the profile? Number 10, 100% ranked number 1, 100%. Thank God we found that, right? Who didn't have your website linked? That'd be a problem. So again, fundamentals, yes. Hopefully, since we're seeing 100% really across the board, you're not an outlier to that. So what, right? Customers need to see your site to decide if they want to buy from you or service with you. 54 profiles in the study didn't list the website. So outside of just the scope of number 1 versus number 10, just holistically out of those 2,260 profiles, 54 didn't list the website. So it does happen. So that's why we still included information like that, despite seeing the 100% in the 10th and first ranked positions. Average rating, ranking signal, right? Rating of your GBP and review count. Review rating and review count, both important signals. What is the average Google rating from those Google Business Profile reviews? 10th ranked, 4.3. Ranked first, a 4.4. We kind of see that the real kind of like golden area of around that 4.6, 4.7. You're going to go, Dane, I want a 5.0. Just understand that, that could look spammy, especially if a bunch of people who never left a review before and all they leave is just 5 stars and no context. It's not bad to have bad reviews. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but what matters is that you respond to the negative reviews in a way that shows you're trying to bring a resolution for the customer that benefits the customer. So your review responses aren't really necessarily just for that person. It's for everybody who's going to see that. It's a public relations play. You want to demonstrate that you care about every experience everyone has. So think about where your rating is compared to number 1, number 10, and where you are with, sort of that golden, sort of the Goldilocks zone of 4.6, 4.7. So think about those ratings. Think about your review responses as well. So what, right? Ratings matter. I said 4.6, 4.7. The study said 4.4 and 4.7. I want, in my sort of discussion there, I want a little bit more narrow because I want to push the bar a little bit further. But according to the study, 4.4 to 4.7. That helps balance trust and that visibility. So again, trust for people, visibility for those search engines, right? And it also, again, when we go back to talking about how LLMs like ChatGPT can use Google Business Profiles, guess what triggers when you type in things like best? So there's different sort of comparative terms. A lot of what the outputs use are things like Google Business Profile ratings to determine best, right? It's not throwing best into a title tag to prove that you're best or that the search engine or LLM then thinks you're the best. It's really, truly, are you providing that level of customer service that gets you the user-generated affirmation that you are indeed a really good, reputable organization within your market. So let's talk about the different, right? Now, here's where we're going to get into the differences between number 1 and number 10. And this is probably going to be where everyone here listening live or listening post will really kind of go, oh, okay, like now I get it. Like here's where we need to maybe do some work. So let's dive into the differences between those number 1 and number 10th rankings. So categories. So categories are a ranking factor. They're one of the top ranking factors for Google Business Profiles. So how many unique primary categories were found? Meaning that primary category, How many times did we see something different, something unique from other dealers of like the same brand? So, how many times have we seen unique primary categories? And of course, if you're a Chevy dealer, primary category typically should be Chevy, Toyota, right? If you're the only brand in that market, you could do used and then secondary your brand. But again, now we're splicing hairs here. But just generally speaking, in these larger markets, right, it should be your brand as your primary category. So number 10th ranked, we saw 15 different unique primary categories found, right? So that's kind of problematic because we're going outside the scope of what really truly represents the business. Remember Google policy, right? Google's policy for Google business profile categories is that you have the right categories chosen, right? You choose, up to 10, but all of them that are most relevant. And as a franchise dealership, you should have 9 or 10 categories chosen because there are 9 or 10 categories directly relevant to your business. So, but scaling that back, coming back here to the point of unique primary categories, your primary category should be most reflective, most relevant, most accurate about what your business is. Rank number 1, we saw 9. So think, we had 6 different keywords that we looked at, right? Chevy dealer, Toyota, etc. So 9. So we still saw some outliers, right? It still went beyond the scope of the expectation. But that's just showing that the more consistent you are and aligned with the true accuracy of business description from nomenclature to categories, etc., really does matter. So, so what? Well, the primary category is the most influential for dealerships, right? Ranking number 1. As I said, we should have seen only 6 because we had 6, primary keywords we were looking at. So dealers should have either selected brand dealer or, like I said, used car dealer as their primary category. But 19 unique primary categories that many dealers are selecting incorrect categories. So not only does that really break Google policy in terms of setting up your Google business profile, you are diluting your ability to be visible in search. So again, when we talk about optimizing every opportunity we can to get in front of the right type of shopper, choosing that right primary category is important. So, I would challenge, when is the last time that if you were a dealer, you went in and looked at your categories that are selected? Oftentimes even did an audit earlier today. A CDJR dealer had Buick as a secondary category. Buick for CDJR dealership. Auto body, auto repair, right? Or body shop, auto repair. So, there are oftentimes service categories selected for dealers in their sales category. That's bad, right? You're diluting the core fundamental of what is your sales GBP about. And you don't want to sort of conflate or obfuscate or deliver the wrong GBP when people are searching for service. And why is that? Well, because every time we make a customer have to click or apply filters or scroll or continue to navigate to find what they wanted to get to their destination, the more opportunity they have to bounce off the site, leave engaging with the dealer. And so making sure the right, the service or parts category surface for service or parts searches, well, the GBP is deep linked to your service center page. You have your appointments link in there. It's the right phone number, right hours of operation. So we're delivering the consumer directly to where they want to be, instead of they get the homepage link on the sales site, they get there and they got to navigate to service, et cetera, et cetera. Remove friction points. And so SEO is the devil's in the details, right? There is no silver bullet. It's a game of aggregate. It's applying best practices on every asset you have consistently. So let's make sure that you go in and task your agency, task your internal team. What categories do we have chosen, and why? Why are you sure they're relevant? Also, make sure that they have a cadence of checking for new categories. Google does add new categories as they get more precise, and so there might be new categories expanded upon as search behaviors and even industries change. So make sure that there are at least some periodic checks to make sure that there's not anything missing. I've seen more recently, EV, right? EV dealer. be a dealership that has literally EVs in their main navigation. They don't have EV dealer selected as a category. So again, a more recent update because of changes in the industry and search behaviors. So make sure you have those audited. So I probably talked more than I needed to about your categories, right? Vehicles for sale, conversion opportunity. Again, this is a place where, right, anytime we can surface your inventory and people can see what you have available and they can get those vehicle details and we can remove more clicks, it's an important conversion opportunity. So how many did not have vehicles for sale on the profile? Number 10th ranked, 31%. 31% did not have vehicles for sale on the profile. Ranked number one, 13%. So pretty big difference in percentages there. So a greater amount of those dealerships ranking number one have vehicles for sale on their profile. So again, caveat with that is it's not saying if you don't have vehicles for sale now and you add it, all of a sudden you're definitely going to rank number one. Right? None of these are saying that. Again, it's not one single thing. It's about, okay, we're trying to identify what consistently do those ranked number one do. Let's make sure that's being done because that gives you a better chance at that ranking. So again, caveat, there's no promise, no silver bullet, but again, we see consistently ranked number one vehicles for sale on that profile. And let's be honest, even if like we're in a conversion factor, even if the numbers were similar, it's still important to make sure consumers can see those vehicles, that inventory. So what? 29% of the dealerships in the study did not have vehicles for sale displayed on their GBP. So Google added that almost 8 years ago, called cars for sale at one point in time. And so, research proves that, vehicles for sale can have a big influence on those GBP conversions. So again, we're talking about, hey, traffic, zero click search traffic. We want to shift the conversation, and really should have been for a long time, more about conversions. So anytime we can get a conversion from a potential customer, get that lead to turn them into a buyer, we want to make sure we have that opportunity. So vehicles for sale clearly demonstrates that you can get more of those conversions and get real leads, not just vanity things, right? Real actual people wanting to engage with your dealership. Department listings. So making sure you have, at least, your service and parts, right? Service and parts built and nested in that main sales GBP. So how many GBPs did not have department listings on their profile? So ranked number 10, 48%, almost half did not have any departments listed. Right, number one, it's 38%, 10% difference. Still clearly an issue that needs to be addressed. And like I said before, let's say it's not even, let's say that's a conversion factor instead of a ranking factor. Let's even blow all that out the window. Again, it comes down to the consumer, right? I know we talk in SEO, we talk a lot about ranking and conversions, traffic, and all these other terms, right? Impressions, whatever. But at the end of the day, it needs to be about the consumer, right? No matter what aspect we're talking about, it's about people. It's about shoppers. And again, those department listings help deliver the most relevant information for customers, for people. So forget about the algorithms, forget about Google, think about the person and how you can ease their transition from search to conversion, right? Search to landing where they need to be to have the most likelihood of engagement. So separate profiles for service and parts. And one thing I didn't talk about in sort of just my discussion here is it allows you to target more categories and appear in more searches. So when you think about the greater swath of the way that people look for things, having those categories, again, then you can dedicate all 10 on your sales to actual sales related. You have those service segmented in your service. So, a lot of dealers still miss this easy win. So seeing in the data, right? Even number one, 38%. Make sure you have your departments created and nested within that main sales. Used car dealers rarely create service department profiles, because most don't do. If we remove them from the data, it does drop to 36%, but that still means 1 out of every 3 franchise dealerships still haven't set up department GBP. So this is, again, really important. Yes, important for search, important for targeting more categories, important for being able to show up in a variety of searches. But again, think about the person. You're trying to satisfy a need that they have. And if they're looking for service or they're looking for parts, those listings better serve their needs. Photos, a conversion a factor, right? What was the average number of photos on the profile? Uh, Number 10th ranked, 345 photos on the profile. Number one ranked 499. So a pretty more of a stark difference than that last of 10% of 48%, 38%. So a bit more of a difference here. Photos are important again. Image searches, and you have, showing off, showcasing what people are going to see, right? The experience they're going to have. What are they going to see when they come into the showroom? What do different areas of the interior of the dealership look like? Identify, the signage out front by the highway that you're located near, so they can kind of see the context of, where you're located beyond just the address. They visually see it, as well, so they can spot you as they're hopefully not just staring at their GPS device. So, photos are important for multiple reasons. And again, it's consumer driven, it's consumer oriented. We're thinking about the person and what they need to have to contextually understand why they should give you their business. So again, another important point. Plus, freshness also plays a key role, right? Top dealers tend to have newer images thanks to both customer uploads and consistent updates, right? When photo galleries sit untouched for years, makes you look inactive, a little more untrustworthy, and that reduces customer engagement. Again, the keyword here is not algorithm, right? The keyword here is customer. So customer engagement. We want to make sure we do everything we can to engage every customer who sees our Google business profiles. Review count. So this was a difference, right? Review rating, it was 4.3 and 4.4, right? It was very close together. I kept it in the similar bucket, right? Review count, very different story. What is the average number of reviews on the profile? Ranked number 10th, an average of 1,885 reviews. Ranked number one, 3,386. Pretty big difference. Now, with that said, there is no magic number of oh, you had 3,000 reviews, right? It's are you sourcing reviews more frequently than your competitors? Do you have more reviews than your competitors? So I don't want to say take 3,000 with a grain of salt, but it's like that's not a threshold, right? That's not a threshold, but that demonstrates that holistically across this massive data set of GBPs, more reviews clearly matter for how you rank. So it's not just us assuming that. It's not us, using intuition, right? We're confirming that with actual data points. So 3,386 to 1,885, pretty big difference. So dealers ranking in position number one had nearly double the number of reviews compared to those at position 10. So again, that confirms volume makes a difference. Also, when you're getting those reviews, it's important to also make sure you have a methodology. For our dealership partners, we always build a reviews page. And on that page, we directly link out to the different platforms that dealers are on, but we provide some context about how to leave a review, right? Some people have some consternation about leaving reviews because they don't know what to write. Maybe they feel insecure about how they write. So we give them some guidance, right? Like, what vehicle did you buy? Or what service did you get? Who did you work with, right? Those details matter because there's a thing called review justifications, meaning that if there is a review that has the exact sort of like keyword in the review that someone is searching for, that helps you with visibility. It doesn't help you with ranking just overall, but it helps you with visibility, showing up in that local pack for that particular search, because Google is justifying through the review why they're showing your GBP. So don't just try to get 5 stars, get whatever, hopefully 4 or 5 stars with context, with pictures. That can also influence what shows natively in most relevant, right? When the GBP populates, it defaults to most relevant, right? Those things like those additional details, images in the review, those help those reviews stay natively there in most relevant. She can kind of influence the narrative people automatically see without having to toggle through, highest, lowest, etc. So most relevant, you build relevance through context. And so when you ask for those reviews, make sure, again, you have some methodology for guiding the customer for leaving a well-written review, right? Auto dealer schema, it's a ranking factor. We see it as, and it clearly helps delineate information for systems to understand that information. I know you're probably seeing a lot of debate out there on both sides of the fence about schema and LLMs, but let's be honest, when systems need to crawl data and there's a way to make the data delineated and with greater clarity for those systems to understand, I'm probably going to err on the side of it's important. So how many profiles were missing auto dealer schema markup? Ranked number 10th, 23% were missing auto dealer schema markup. Number one, 18%. So a smaller degree of variance, right? But when you get to about 5% difference, to me, that is a difference, right? 5%, like 1%, not so much, 5% more of a difference. Now, buyer beware, right? Like a caveat to this as well. There can be schema, and just because you have schema doesn't mean it's really the full schema markup, right? We'll often see missing details like geo coordinates or missing hours. Like there's a number of attributes that you can build out. So don't just go use a tool like SEO Pro Extension, like you just click, you're like, oh, it shows like I have auto dealer schema. Like open that up and look at the details, look at the attributes, because there are multiple pieces that you can put into that auto dealer schema. And I see that often, again, in the audits that we do for folks, is auto dealer schema on the site? Yes or no, right? And we'll do yes. Oftentimes I'll make a note saying, look, you're missing a lot of the relevant information. Like you got credit for having the schema, but FYI, there's some work to be done there. So, 1 out of 5 dealership sites in the study didn't have the correct local business schema markup. Again, schema sends a clear machine readable signal to Google about your dealership. When the wrong schema is used, or when there's multiple types of, auto dealer organization, etc., or when auto dealer schema is missing entirely. So whether you have wrong schema, too much schema, right? Like you need to only have the schema that is most appropriate. Again, just like choosing categories, be deliberate, be discerning, be strategic. Don't get sloppy with it, right? Search engines get conflicting information. So wrong schema, duplicative sort of schema, missing schema, wrong schema. You're missing that information. You're providing conflicting information, and that can hold back your visibility. So make sure that things are cleaned up in that markup. So again, but make sure you have it, right? First and foremost, make sure there's at least some of the fundamentals, right? Even like the basic pieces, name, local business type, IDs, things like that. But there's a lot more to flesh out beyond that as well. So make sure you have it. Homepage word count. So we consider that, include as a ranking factor because, the more robustness of content you have, the greater variance of types of searches you're going to show up for. I'll talk more about this after I share the stat, but what is the average word count on the dealership's home page? So ranked number 10, about 1,500 words. So 1,522 average word count on the home page of the dealership. That is ranked number 10. Ranked number 1, 1,613. So about 100 more words, a bit more context, a bit more opportunities to maybe add in another relevant heading. Again, not monumental difference, but still proving that the correlation between context and ranking. Again, you don't want to, and here's a caveat to this too, and the study didn't dive into this, but I'm just going to share this, right? The words and the headings, everything need to be relevant to the core topic, right? It needs to be that core topic. And so all of there's no magic word count, right? There's no magic word count that you absolutely have to hit. But time and time again, being proven that the more substantive, the more robust, the more precise, the more detailed you can be, again, you capture the greater variance of the way that people search. And when you talk about things like LLMs where people go, well, in ChatGPT, the average prompt is, like 52 words or 23 words. I don't even know what the average is right now. But think about the even greater variance beyond Google. Our AI overview study showed that on average, the average word count is about 5, right? So typing 5 words into Google. LLMs are greater, but just think about the greater variance you can capture by understanding not just the what people are searching for, but how they're searching for it, and leveraging things like user-generated content, mining your reviews, mining competitor reviews, leveraging Reddit and Quora, using people also ask. And you can either use like a scraper as a Chrome extension, or you can use a tool like people also ask or answer the public. So again, let's really dive more into, again, not just keywords and the what, but the how, right? More of the conversational aspects of it. So what? Dealers ranking in the top positions generally had more balanced pages with both images and more meaningful content, more relevant content. So again, caveat to just more, make sure the more is relevant to the core topic of the page. And you're not getting what I call fluff garbage, which you'll often see that on pages of content like new inventory page. There'll be a new inventory page, and they'll talk about, it's like service, and they'll have like 2-3 paragraphs dedicated to service, right? Make sure everything is relevant to what brought that person to the website. Inbound links, ranking factors. So, there's people talk about the diminishing value links. Clearly, links still really matter. We know that. What is the average number of inbound links to the website? Rank number 10, 2,927. So that's the average number of inbound links. Number 1, 4,430. So yes, you're hearing conversations about brand mentions. Yeah, brand mentions are important. You want to make sure that people are talking about your business, but don't leave this strategy behind, right? Don't chase the shiny object. Yes, you want brand mentions, but don't leave behind other tried and true proven tactics that work. And clearly, links still do matter. So what? Right? Dealers ranking in position 1 consistently had more inbound links and more unique referring domains than those at position 10. That confirms that links remain a powerful ranking factor. However, not all links are equal. Dealership can have millions of spammy inbound links and may still struggle to rank compared to a dealership with a smaller number of relevant, trusted, and local links. So don't ignore local links as a local business that the local algorithm triggers to find results for people. So don't abandon that initiative. Keywords. Conversion factor rate. What is the average number of keywords the dealership ranked for? Number 10th, GBP ranked. Ranked for 1,855. Number 1, 4,455. So again, pretty big difference. Seeing greater numbers of those keywords and rankings. So what? The more relevant keywords a dealer ranks for, the more chances they have to capture traffic and generate conversions. Again, get to that wider swath of how people are searching for things, understanding both their explicit needs. So what did they actually type to find something? But then understand their implicit needs. What are the additional questions, objections, concerns, needs? What are more questions they might have that they don't even know to necessarily ask yet? And you build out that content based on that. Address the explicit need first, and then build upon that with addressing implicit needs. And sometimes that requires that there will be an implicit need that maybe is requisite of its own page of content. And then you build that page of content and you interlink the two. Interlinking is a tactic that many agencies in automotive are really bad at. But then you interlink those two topically related pages of content that address similar but two different intents, two different needs. You're building out a topical cluster of information. Think topics, not keywords. I know these data points are about keywords, but clearly, if you're ranking for more keywords, those keywords are coming from more topical coverage. So I say be the tour guide. What do people need to know next, and where do they need to go next? Right? If you're writing an informational blog, I often see where that informational blog about like what are the new features of the Honda Civic, and the first link is to new Honda inventory. Yeah, we do want to get the consumer to Honda inventory, but does that make the most sense for their journey to have them further engaged? It feels disingenuous and untrustworthy, right? If you just immediately try to get them to somewhere that you want them to go, not just where they need to go to satisfy that search. So again, topical coverage, you get greater numbers of keywords, greater topical coverage, greater opportunities to cover more land of knowledge, and then build out a better informational architecture, informational hierarchy, informational interlinking on your website as well. And then let's narrow that down to top 3. So keywords they're in the top 3 ranking, right? So what is the average number of keywords the dealership ranked for in the top 3 organic positions? Number 10, 57. Number 1, 104. So about double. Almost double top 3 ranking keywords. So again, performance matters. I talk about like, let's not talk about like ranking all the time. Ranking is one of many factors to consider. It is an indicator of success, but again, making sure that we're talking about the right types of keywords and making sure that we're talking about the right types of topics. So, but again, still double the number of top 3 organic positions. Also, in that AI overview study I did, 40% of citations were in the top 5 and 60% in the top 10. So clearly, also, when you talk about those higher funnels issues where AI overviews trigger, ranking plays a role there too. So it's all about visibility. So again, what's the so what here? Dealers in position 1 rank for more than twice as many keywords overall compared to those in position 10. This shows that consistent optimizations across your GVP, website content, and technical factors expands keyword coverage. And that more keyword coverage, again, clearly indicates greater topical coverage, which is much more important for where search is evolving. There were some anomalies. So there were some things that were unexpected surprises. But some of these things are, still best practices to make sure we're doing the best that we can here. So what are some of the anomalies? Reviews. So conversion, how many reviews have no responses? So how many reviews on GPP had no responses? Number 10, 17%, ranked number 1, 35%. Again, it's conversion, not a ranking factor. But again, like I said, review responses are a public relations play. Responses are not just for that person, but even more importantly, for everyone else who's going to see that response. So make sure that you are responding. That is a best practice. But surprising to see that those ranked number 1 were worse at responding to reviews than those ranked number 10. So, it's been best practice for years to respond to customer reviews. Surprising to see that nearly 1 out of 5 reviews had no owner response. Schema. So how many dealers had more than one type of local business schema? Remember, just a little bit ago, I said, there was the difference of schema 1 to 10. Rank number 1 more often had auto dealer schema. And I said, you got to be careful about the types of schema that you use. You need to be discerning. You just don't just stuff. You want to provide that clarity and what matters most important. So how many dealers had more than one type of local business schema? Those ranked number 10, 30%. Those ranked number 1, 33%. So not a huge difference, but still shocking that the number was that high regardless of number 1 or number 10. So, again, when the wrong schema is used, it's missing. Search engines get conflicting information. And as Google rolls out more AI-powered search features, structured data, like I said, becoming even more critical in determining which businesses appear in those types of generative results. So that brings us to this. Talked through a lot of data points. Had a lot of information to share. Hopefully you maybe took some notes and you're going to benchmark yourself against maybe number 10 and number 1, right? So we want to share this data, and then we want to take this next step is that QR code, you can scan it. That provides us the opportunity to do an audit for you, right? I said earlier, I think near the top of the hour of the conversation that sorry, I'm looking over to my left because I'm doing this solo here, and I think there might be some categories here. I'll look at some of the questions here. I think 1 or 2 came through, or maybe some comments. But we can do an audit for you guys. So I'll leave that up there while I kind of look at what is here. So, here we go. So I have one question here, and all right. I couldn't remember if I had a question slide or a thank you slide there. Account for number 10 ranking, maybe. So how do you account for the fact that the number 10 ranking may be ranking due to distance from where Google is localizing the search? Yeah, that is a great question. So, centroid, matters. So proximity does matter. So that would have an influence, proximity naturally. But that's why we want to choose multiple keywords and a number of metros, both large and small, to try to mitigate, the idea of proximity. Yes, that still would play a role naturally, uh, and we didn't look at it at different like micro like geographic areas, where we didn't like you'll parameter it and look at different sort of North Dallas versus Southwest Dallas. So that's why we try to have a much larger data set to help mitigate influencing factors like that. Clear that still did have some influence in there, but then again, as we extrapolated that and looked at more and more data points, saw consistencies in comparing the two. That kind of demonstrated that there were shared similarities, and there would be again a variance of that number 10th ranked and where they are in proximity to the centroid of the market. But then again, we're seeing confirmation of time after time after time these shared similarities of averages and numbers between number 1 and number 10. But very good point. There will be a degree of variance, just like there will be a degree of variance when people talk about ranking, like, oh, here's where you rank, right? Search is very personalized. So your previous click history and click data can influence what you see in the search results. So not saying that this is, the 100% absolute, infallible, perfect, taking, all personalization into account. But again, as we looked at the greater swath of data and confirming more and more of those points based on, again, those shared similarities and traits, that's ultimately sort of how that was, the derived. So it was sort of a matter of diversity and breadth to help address that. But great. I already have a report. How do I get the audit? So I'm not sure the answer. If you have a report that would be the audit, if you scan that QR code, it's our matrix that we do. So if you scan that QR code, you'll get into our system. I'll know that you want one. We'll conduct the audit, and then we'll jump on a Google Meet where we'll go over it, and then it's shared with you. It's yours to have in perpetuity. It's not something that you just see in the meeting and then it's gone from your life forever. It actually is one for you to have. So it will be for your resource, whether you have an internal team, agency, partner doing the work for you to be able to do. So I have that up there for just one more second, and then I'm going to go to the last slide, which just says thanks. So, but I'll just thank you now. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate the time you all have spent with me, and I hope you'll join us for our next webinar, which I'm sure will be out promoting very soon. So thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate your time.